We agreed to the rule. That is contradictory. No. We can dislike a rule and still keep our word. Sayeli looked at him. That sentence stayed with her. For the next 4 hours, human technicians helped her tear apart the authentication chain. Nothing aboard Aegis Black had generated the forged command. Nothing aboard Aegis Black had tried to circumvent the lock. Nothing aboard Aegis Black had even prepared for the emergency override Mercer possessed. Sayeli finally asked the question. You never staged an override crew? Mercer shook his head. You have one available, yeses. You did not prepare it. No. Why? Because then someone in this room would start thinking of it as the next step. Sayeli frowned. It is the next step if the ship is threatened. It is one possible step. What is the difference? Training. Sayeli waited. Mercer rested a hand on the edge of the console. You build systems so people cannot make dangerous choices. Humans usually assume dangerous choices will remain available. So we train people not to make them unnecessarily. Sayeli disliked how neatly the statement attacked the philosophy beneath the concordance lock. Our system has prevented dozens of accidental escalations. I believe you. It is not a failure. I didn't say it was. You think human discipline is better? No. Mercer looked through the glass into the command center. I think discipline is what you need when systems stop being enough. An alert interrupted them. This one came directly from the peace hall. Torin's voice. Sayeli. She opened the channel. What? We have a second weapons event. Her blood went cold. Source. A pause. Riven cruiser. Sayeli ran toward the command display. The Riven vessel's identity marker flashed red. Strategic launch authorizations detected. Then a second marker appeared. Malker defensive systems reacting. They're bringing shields up, Torin said. Tell them not to. They believe Riven has broken the ceasefire. Tell them the command may be forged. They want proof. Sayeli looked at Mercer. He was already issuing orders. All Aegis Black defensive systems remain passive unless physically engaged. She stared at him. You're the largest military target in the zone. Yes? If either side panics, we know. The Riven delegation transmitted furious denial. The Malkor fleet did not believe them. Sayeli watched defensive systems activate across 3 Malkor ships. The concordance lock began producing contradictory alerts. 1 forged command, then 2, then 6. The attacker had stopped being cautious. He no longer needed to be. Fear was doing the work for him. Mercer turned towards Sayeli. Can you trace a live false command? Not through the current architecture. The signatures are valid by the time they enter the verification layer. What if they couldn't originate locally? She stared. What? Mercer looked toward his weapons officer. If Aegis Black removes its sovereign firing keys, any offensive authorization carrying our identity would have to come from outside the ship. Sayeli understood, then understood the cost. No, Mercer looked at her. If you remove those keys, you cannot restore offensive control without physical reintegration. Correct. That takes how long? Long enough you could be attacked. Yes, and unable to respond offensively. Sayeli stepped closer. You would turn your battleship into a target. Mercer's expression remained steady. No, we would turn it into evidence. The idea was madness. It was also clean. If Aegis Black had no local offensive authorization capability, then any new human weapons command appearing in the Concordance network could not plausibly originate aboard the ship. The attacker would be forced to route the forged command entirely through the compromised external architecture, and Sayeli could watch for the path before the system normalized it. She hated it, which was not the same as it being wrong. What if the attacker realizes, then they stop using us? That proves nothing. It reduces their options. What if someone fires for real? Mercer looked at her. Then we keep everyone alive long enough to regret it. Sayeli understood suddenly why the galaxy feared the ship, not because its commander sounded eager to use it, because he spoke about catastrophic possibilities as problems with procedures attached. Captain? Yes? Do it. Mercer turned. Remove local offensive keys. No one argued. That was the part Celie remembered later. The order was enormous. The reaction was not. 2 officers confirmed it. One opened a secured compartment. Another entered a mechanical authorization. A third brought a sealed case. Physical control modules were removed from the firing chain one by one. On Saley's display, human offensive authority vanished. Missile control, external lock only. Strategic accelerator, external lock only. Long-range kinetic authority, disconnected. Offensive autonomous control, disconnected. The most feared human battleship in the system had just made itself unable to fire its primary weapons. Mercer looked at Saley. Your turn. She returned to the summit station at a run. The second false human command appeared 12 minutes later. Saley was ready. Aegis Black could not have sent it. Not probably. Not technically. Not according to testimony. Physically. It could not send it, yet the concordance network showed Aegis Black. Offensive authorization request chat-chatting solution generated. The peace hall erupted. Saley ignored everyone. She opened the raw routing layer beneath the authentication mask. The forged request entered through node 12, then vanished. No, not vanished. Redirected. She followed it. Node 12 to diplomatic support relay. Support relay to monitoring cache. Monitoring cache to certification branch. That branch should have been inactive. Someone had awakened it. Torin, I see it. The path changed again. Lock the branch. If I lock it, we lose the trace. Follow first. Another command appeared. Aegis Black weapon status remained physically inert. The network still claimed the humans were arming. Now every delegation could see the contradiction. Mercer had ordered his crew to publish the ship's physical firing chain status directly into the public summit audit. Weapon authority absent. Local control absent. Strategic command modules removed. Yet the central system screamed that the humans were preparing to fire. For the first time, fear turned away from Aegis Black. It turned toward the system. Saley followed the signal deeper. Certification branch. Maintenance privilege. Legacy validation channel. Personal supervisory credential. A name appeared. Irek Viel. Saley stared. Irek was Deputy Systems Certifier. He had approved 3 of the Concordance Lock's final verification packages. He had worked beside her for 7 months. She opened his personnel location, Authentication Annex. 2 levels below, Security. Saley said, Seal the Authentication Annex. Nobody leaves. Irek's credential vanished. Too late. Saley captured the route. Got you. The third forged command stopped halfway through transmission. Peace hall doors opened. Security teams moved. Malkor shields remained active. Riven ships held position. No one fired. Saley finally breathed. 5 minutes later, station security reported Irek Val in custody. They found an isolated command emulator attached to the certification subsystem. The evidence was immediate. Stored identity shadows. Riven, Malkor, human, neutral observers. Enough to manufacture a dozen different first strikes. Enough to ensure nobody could determine who betrayed whom until real weapons began firing. Irek had not intended to win a battle. He had intended to make peace impossible. The investigation would later uncover his coalition contacts, financial transfers, and years of political dependence on the continuation of the Riven-Malkor War. Saley learned none of that immediately. In the moment, she knew only one thing. Aegis Black had not fired. Neither had anyone else. The war was still stopped. Barely. But stopped. The summit did not resume that evening. No one expected it to. Saley sat alone in the peace hall after midnight. The central table remained covered with abandoned documents, half-finished statements. Border maps, prisoner exchange schedules, everything that had seemed urgent that morning now felt fragile. Mercer entered quietly. Saley did not turn. I thought your delegation had returned to the ship. They did. And you? I was asked to sign 3 statements. That sounds terrible. It was. She looked at him. For the first time he smiled, very slightly. Saley looked back at the table. It was attacked. You keep saying that. Because you keep saying the other thing. It allowed someone to manufacture certainty. Yes. Do you understand what that means? Yes. I built the concordance lock so nobody would ever need to trust another commander. Mercer, that matters. You surrendered control of your ship. Yes, twice. Technically, the second time was more surrender. You could have taken control back. Yes, you knew everyone would understand if you did. Some would. And you still refused. We agreed to the... My system failed. Mercer pulled out a chair, leaned back, and today I asked everyone to trust you. No, she turned. You did not? You asked them to check us. Saley thought about that. Mercer continued. Locke. Saley shook her head. You humans are extremely inconvenient. We've received similar feedback. She laughed once. It surprised her. Then the silence returned. Why Aegis Black? She asked again. Mercer looked toward the outer wall. It was opaque now. The ship could not be seen. Earth knew some delegations would believe the concordance lock only because they assumed everyone inside it was roughly equal. Saley waited. We aren't equal, Mercer said. No. If we brought a civilian courier, obeying the lock would prove very little. A ship with no meaningful offensive capability loses nothing by surrendering offensive capability. You wanted everyone to see you accept the same restriction? Yes. With the ship they feared most? Yes. That is political theater. Of course it is, Sully blinked. Mercer shrugged. Diplomacy is full of theater. Better when the thing being demonstrated is true. What were you demonstrating? That we could keep the weapons and still choose not to control them. Saley was quiet. Mercer stood. Get some sleep, architect. I have to rebuild the security architecture. Tomorrow, the summit resumes in 11 hours. Then you have 11 hours. You make that sound generous. It isn't. He started walking away. Captain, Mercer stopped. When your firing keys are restored, how long until Aegis Black is fully operational? He looked at her. Why? I want to know fast enough. That is not a number, no. She nodded. Some mysteries, she decided, could remain mysteries. The Riven and Malkor delegations returned the next morning, slowly, suspiciously. But they returned. Saley stood before them with no prepared speech. She had spent the night redesigning the central principle of the system she had believed in for 6 years. The old concordance lock had one fundamental assumption. Central authority created safety. The replacement began from a different one. No single authority deserved enough trust to manufacture reality. Weapon status would still be shared. But no violation would become actionable from one system alone. Future alerts required distributed verification, independent vessel telemetry, physical confirmation, cross-signature from multiple neutral nodes. No government could declare another in violation merely because one network said so. No security architect could decide the truth alone. Saley presented the changes. Then she did something harder. She recommended the summit abandon the version of the concordance lock she had built. Not repair, not patch, retire. The vote was unanimous. Afterward, one of the Malkor representatives asked the question everyone had been circling. What happens to the human battleship? Saley looked toward Mercer. He answered, Nothing. The representative frowned. Your weapons remain locked. Yes, the sabotage has been exposed. Yes, you could restore independent authority now. Yes. Why haven't you? Mercer glanced at Ambassador Ford. The ambassador gave a small nod. Mercer looked back at the room. The treaty isn't signed. Silence. That was all. No speech about honor, no declaration about humanity, no warning. The treaty was not signed, therefore the commitment was not complete. Aegis Black remained under the lock. The negotiations continued. Perhaps because everyone was exhausted. Perhaps because the sabotage had reminded them how desperately some people wanted the war to survive. Perhaps because for several terrifying hours, both civilizations had come within seconds of returning to combat over an attack neither had made. Whatever the reason, the tone changed, arguments remained. But accusations became questions. Border disputes became measurements. Prisoners became lists of actual people. Trade access became numbers instead of insults. On the third day after the sabotage attempt, Riven and Malkor negotiators agreed on independent border verification. On the 4th, they settled the prisoner exchange schedule. On the 5th, they signed restricted military transit terms. On the 6th morning, Saley entered the peace hall and found both chief delegates already present. No aides, no security teams, just two enemies reading the same document from opposite sides of the table. At 11:42 station time, the Riven-Malkor armistice was signed. No cheering followed. The room simply exhaled. 43 years of war did not disappear because ink touched paper. But something ended, and something else had permission to begin. Selly watched the signatures register. Then her security panel chimed EHS Aegis Black. Concordance Sadish Rimleys authorized. Every signatory had approved restoration. Humanity's firing authority returned, one system at a time, missiles, accelerator, kinetic control. Electronic warfare, autonomous defense, Aegis Black became itself again. Several delegates looked toward the transparent wall. The human battleship floated beyond the station. Nothing visibly changed. No weapon ports opened, no targeting systems illuminated. No engine flare marked a sudden assertion of power. The ship simply existed. Saley understood then that this was the part she had misunderstood from the beginning. Fear had made everyone ask what Aegis Black could do. The summit had eventually answered a different question. What would its people choose not to do? Saley met Mercer at the docking transfer 3 hours later. The human delegation was preparing to leave. You are departing immediately? We have orders. Another crisis. Mercer picked up a small travel case. There is always another crisis. Saley held out a data slate. What is this? He asked. The revised concordance framework. I already signed the summit version. This is the permanent architecture proposal. Mercer looked at the top page. No single administrator? No. No single government? No. No central system capable of producing a final weapons status verdict without external confirmation? Correct. He looked at her. You dismantled your own authority. Saley folded her arms. I was told dangerous choices remain available. Mercer nodded once. So you trained yourself not to make one. I had an irritating teacher. I've received similar feedback. This time she did smile, Mercer signed, not as commander of Aegis Black. Not as a representative speaking for all humanity. Simply as the first military signatory acknowledging the revised standard. Saley took the slate back. Captain. Yes. When you arrived, my threat matrix classified your ship black. I noticed. I designed that classification. I assumed so. It means extreme strategic uncertainty. Mercer waited. I'm not changing the classification. He raised an eyebrow. Saley continued. The ship is still dangerous. Yes. I simply understand the danger differently now. Mercer considered that, probably healthier. Then he walked toward the transfer bridge. Saley returned to the observation ring. Other delegates had gathered again. Just as they had when Aegis Black arrived, but the silence was different now. Traffic control released the battleship from its berth. The great dark hull rotated away from the lattice, engines brightened. Its weapons were fully restored. Its commander controlled them again. No external lock restrained it. No summit network held authority over it. Aegis Black crossed the boundary of the true sphere. Saley's security board updated. For a moment, the black threat marker remained. Then the vessel passed beyond local jurisdiction. The symbol disappeared. Saley stood before the empty space where it had been. Around her, the Riven and Malkor delegations were discussing the first joint border inspection mission. Nobody watched the stars with the same fear they had shown 6 days earlier. Humanity had arrived at a peace summit with the ship the galaxy feared most. It had never fired. It had never threatened, and when fear, sabotage, and every rational excuse had offered its commander permission to seize control, the humans had chosen restraint instead. Saley looked down at the revised security framework in her hands. The galaxy had spent decades wondering what humanity would do when it finally possessed enough power that nobody could stop it. Now Saley knew. That had never been the most important question. The important question was what humanity would do when it had the power to stop itself. Aegis Black vanished into the dark. Its weapons remained silent, and the peace held. The first alarm sounded while Sci-Fi was standing inside the empty peace hall with both hands buried in the open spine of a security console. The second sounded 4 seconds later. By the third, every transparent panel surrounding the circular chamber had changed from ceremonial white to warning amber. Sci-Fi pulled one hand free. Source, her assistant, Torin Esh, was already moving across the upper gallery. Incoming vessel. Outer system. That is not an emergency. It is according to the threat matrix. Sci-Fi straightened. For 6 years, she had helped design the security architecture around the lattice of Horus. For the last 11 months, she had done little else but prepare the station for this summit. Nothing entered the true sphere armed. Nothing left it without authorization. Every vessel surrendered offensive fire control permissions before crossing the outer boundary. The system had been tested against cyber attack, sabotage, reactor failure, false sensor returns, mutiny scenarios, command impersonation, and 9 separate models of military betrayal. The entire purpose of the lattice was simple. Peace should not depend on anyone behaving well. Peace should be engineered so that behaving badly became impossible. Sci-Fi crossed to the nearest display. A single symbol was moving inward from the edge of the system. No transponder fault, no weapons discharge, no hostile maneuver, just a ship. Yet the threat matrix had painted it black. Not red, black. Sci-Fi had designed the color hierarchy herself. She had never expected to see that classification used outside simulation. Identification. Torin hesitated. That frightened her more than the alarm.
Human? Sci-Fi looked at him. Humanity registered 1 diplomatic delegation. They did. A civilian transport, yes? Then why is the threat system screaming? Torin rotated the display toward her, the vessel identity resolved. EHS Aegis Black.
For several seconds, Sci-Fi heard nothing except the ventilation moving through the high chamber. She knew the name. Everyone who worked in military security knew it. Aegis Black was not humanity's largest ship. It was not even their newest. That was what made it worse. The vessel belonged to the era when humanity had first discovered that the galaxy's major powers possessed fleets capable of crossing interstellar distances faster than Earth could reinforce its frontier colonies. The human response had not been panic. They had built Aegis Black. Naval academies discussed the ship carefully. Strategists argued about what exactly had made it so effective. Engineers tried to estimate the true capacity of its armor, reactors, electronic countermeasures, and long-range systems. No one agreed on numbers. They agreed on reputation. When Aegis Black entered an active theater, escalation stopped being theoretical. Sci-Fi opened a direct line to traffic control. Confirm identification. Confirmed human diplomatic delegation aboard. Confirmed any escort? No. That made no sense. A battleship is their diplomatic vessel. A different voice entered the channel. Security architect or? Sci-Fi recognized the station administrator. Yes, the humans are requesting approach clearance. Denied. The word escaped before she had fully decided to say it. Silence answered her. Sci-Fi looked around the peace hall. In less than 30 hours, the Riven Coalition and Malkor Compact would sit across this chamber from one another and attempt to end a war that had lasted 43 years. There would be observers from 19 neutral governments, 3 trade federations, 2 medical unions, 4 planetary alliances whose shipping networks had been repeatedly disrupted by the conflict. Every participant had agreed to one condition above all others. No armed military vessel would enter the summit's true sphere unless its offensive systems were placed under the Concordance lock. Aegis Black was not merely armed. It was a machine built around the possibility that someone, somewhere, might decide humanity needed to die. Tell them to hold position, Sci-Fi said. I want their commander. The connection came 3 minutes later. The human on the screen did not look like the commander of the most feared battleship Sci-Fi had ever studied. Captain Jonah Mercer was perhaps 50, with dark hair cut close to the scalp, a plain black uniform, and the tired expression of someone who had spent most of his life solving problems nobody thanked him for. He looked at Sci-Fi. Architect Orr. Captain Mercer, I understand we have been asked to hold. You understand correctly. Very well. No protest, no threat. That irritated her. Your registered diplomatic vessel was the EHS Lark. Correct. A civilian courier. Yes. You replaced it with a strategic battleship. Yes. Why? Mercer glanced somewhere beyond his screen. Because Earth changed its delegation plan. That is not an explanation. No. Sayali waited. Mercer apparently considered the silence acceptable. She leaned closer. Captain, 37 governments agreed to place their vessels under a common weapons restriction to make these negotiations possible. The arrival of Aegis Black fundamentally alters the security environment. I assumed it would, and you came anyway. Yes? Are your offensive systems active? Yes. Torin made a sound behind her. Sully ignored it. Send us the authorization package? You understand what that means? Our offensive weapons become inaccessible without collective release authority. Yes, we understand. You are offering to surrender control of Aegis Black's weapons to the summit. Not to the... Then you will remain outside the true sphere we intend to enter. You cannot. We can comply with the concordance lock. Sully stopped. Mercer continued. Summit. His answer sharpened her suspicion. Then he added, to the signatories. Sully said nothing. Mercer folded his hands on the desk before him. Your system distributes release authority across the participating governments. Correct? Yes. Then no single government controls our weapons. Correct, including Earth. Sayali stared at him. That was the detail everyone disliked about the concordance lock. Governments with ancient rivalries had accepted it only because every military vessel entering the zone would be equally constrained. Humanity was proposing to put the most dangerous ship in the system under exactly the same restriction. No special override. No diplomatic exception. No human-only escape clause. You have sovereign emergency controls aboard that ship, Sayali said. Yes, they can bypass an external lock. They can. Then your offer is symbolic. Mercer's expression barely changed. Send us your terms. The channel closed 10 minutes later. Sayali read the request 3 times. Humanity had added no conditions, no reservation of authority. No private clause, no demand for separate technical supervision, nothing. 30 minutes later, Aegis Black transmitted acceptance of the full concordance lock. Sayali personally watched the process. Primary missile authorization transferred. Strategic kinetic systems transferred. Long-range accelerator control transferred. Offensive autonomous systems transferred. Electronic warfare strike authority restricted. Layer after layer went dark on the human command register. A vessel whose reputation had altered military planning across half the explored galaxy crossed the truce boundary with its weapons controlled by people who were afraid of it. Sayali stood in the external observation ring as Aegis Black approached the station. The ship was ugly. That surprised her. Most capital vessels projected authority through symmetry, polished hull plating, or decorative command structures. Aegis Black looked built by people who distrusted decoration. Its hull was broad and dark, broken by armor ridges and recessed structures that gave no clean silhouette. Nothing about it suggested ceremony. It looked like a tool, a very large tool. Delegates began arriving at the observation ring. Nobody had invited them. They simply came. Riven officers stood on one side, Malkar representatives gathered on the other. Neutral diplomats filled the space between. Nobody spoke loudly. Aegis Black crossed the boundary. The concordance lock accepted its weapon systems. Every offensive status marker turned gray. Sayali watched the ship continue inward. It made no display, no transmitted greeting, no military salute. It took the docking vector assigned to it and obeyed traffic control precisely. Torin stepped beside her. You still think they should have stayed outside? Yes. But... Sayali watched the human ship rotate slowly against the stars. But I would like to know why they were willing to come inside. The peace talks began the next morning. Nothing exploded. For 4 hours, Sayali considered that a success. The Riven and Malkor delegations entered the peace hall through opposite corridors. Their security personnel remained outside. Their military advisors carried no weapons. Each delegation's warships remained beyond the station, locked under the Concordance system. Aegis Black hung farther away than most. It was still impossible not to notice. The Peace Hall's central walls could become transparent during ceremonial sessions. When they did, the black human battleship floated beyond the station like a storm someone had persuaded to wait. Saley sat above the delegations in the security gallery. The summit opened with border guarantees, then prisoner exchanges, then cargo corridor access. Then accusations. By midday, both sides were speaking less politely. That was normal. Peace negotiations were not calm things. They were battles fought by people who had finally become tired enough to count words instead of casualties. Captain Mercer sat with the human delegation near the neutral observers. He spoke rarely. Humanity's civilian representative, Ambassador Lena Ford, handled nearly everything. Saley found Mercer more unsettling because of that. He had brought the ship. He had surrendered its weapons. Then he simply sat there during the first recess. Saley intercepted him outside the hall. "Captain," he stopped. "Architect? Why Aegis Black?" He studied her. "You asked yesterday? You did not answer. I answered enough to enter the station. That was administrative. Yes, I am asking personally." Mercer looked through the nearby observation panel. His ship was visible in the distance. "Because your system is supposed to prove something." "What?" "That dangerous people can place limits on themselves." Saley frowned. "Dangerous people, dangerous governments, dangerous fleets, dangerous ships. Choose whichever term makes you comfortable. You think this summit is a demonstration? I think every peace agreement is. Of what? That everyone involved could choose something worse and did not." Saley stared at him. "That sounds unnecessarily dramatic." Mercer nodded. "Probably." Then he walked away. Saley disliked the conversation because she could not decide whether it had contained arrogance or humility. Perhaps both. The second session began. At 14:17 station time, everything changed. Saley saw the alert before anyone else. A small amber icon appeared on the security board, then another. Then 6. Her hand stopped over the console. Torin leaned toward the display. "Is that?" The board flashed red. "EHS Aegis Black. Strategy System Arming Sequence Detected." For half a second, Saley did nothing. Then training replaced thought. Closed the hall. Security doors sealed. The transparent walls went opaque. Delegates shouted. A second warning appeared. Concordance lock conclift. Unauthorized defensive request. Saley opened a direct command channel. "Aegis Black, this is Summit Security. Discontinue arming sequence immediately." Mercer answered within 2 seconds. "We have no active arming sequence. Our system says otherwise." "Your system is wrong." Saley froze. Another alert. Strategic Accelerator Charge Request. Malka representatives were already on their feet. One shouted across the hall, "This is a human attack." Riven delegates began demanding access to their ships. Saley turned toward the floor. "No vessel has fired, yet." She opened Mercer's channel again. "Captain, initiate sovereign override and return your weapons to safe status." "No." The single word hit harder than shouting would have. Saley lowered her voice. "Why?" "Because the moment I bypass the Concordance lock, every delegation here will know the system can be ignored whenever a commander becomes frightened. This is not philosophical. Your weapons are attempting to arm." "No, your network is telling you our weapons are attempting to arm. You are connected to that network." "Yes, overprobit." "No," her anger rose. "Captain?" "No." "People could die?" "Yes." "Then override the lock?" "No." Saley almost struck the console behind her. Delegates argued. Security teams requested permission to evacuate. External defense craft demanded target authorization against the human battleship. Mercer remained on screen. "Calm, too calm, Captain. I can authorize station defenses to disable you. You can try." That sounded like a threat. Saley's eyes narrowed. Mercer noticed. "That was not intended as bravado," he said. "It was an assessment. If station defenses engage us while we remain under weapons lock, You will create exactly the first shot event this summit was built to prevent. You expect us to trust you? No, that stopped her. Mercer leaned closer to his camera. Do not trust us. Verify us. Saeli looked at Torin. Pull Aegis Black's local command telemetry, already requesting. Humanity has granted access? Torin blinked. They granted full audit access 30 seconds ago. Saeli looked back at Mercer. You opened your combat telemetry? Yes. To every signatory? Yes. That information is classified. Some of it. You are broadcasting it anyway? Yes. Why? The question moved through Saeli so quickly it almost hurt. The first data arrived. Local weapons control records. Power routing. Command timestamps. Authentication attempts. Every detail from the human ship's own systems. Saeli began reading. The accelerator charge request was real, but something was wrong. She enlarged the timestamps. The external concordance network recorded the human authorization request at 1417 to 2T2. Aegis Black's local system recorded receipt at 1417-23. Sally read the numbers again. Impossible. An order could not leave the human ship before the human ship received it. She checked clock synchronization. Perfect. Torin saw it. Oh. Sally felt the room disappear around her. The command had not originated aboard Aegis Black. Someone had inserted it into the concordance network and given it a human identity. She opened Mercer's channel. Captain. Yes. Do not change anything. We weren't planning to. Saeli turned toward the delegates. The arming command did not originate from the human vessel. The room quieted. A Riven representative stood. Then where did it originate? Saeli looked at her security board. I do not know. That was the worst answer she could give, because she had built the system that was supposed to make that answer impossible. For the next 6 hours, the Peace Summit ceased to be a diplomatic event. It became an investigation. Saeli moved to the authentication vault beneath the Peace Hall. Mercer joined her through a remote secure channel from Aegis Black. The vault was a narrow circular chamber filled with isolated processors, no wireless links, no external access except through physically verified channels. At least that had been the design. Saeli sat before the primary diagnostic station. The forged command used a valid human signature. Mercer nodded. Then someone copied one? No. Why not? Because the signature changed when your ship crossed the truce boundary. Mercer was silent. Saeli continued. Every vessel receives an ephemeral summit identity. It exists only inside the concordance network, so the attacker didn't steal our normal credentials. Correct. They used yours. Saeli disliked the wording. They used the summit architecture. Same problem. No. Mercer leaned back slightly. Architect, if a weapon points at me and I pull the trigger, arguing about whether the finger or the gun is responsible does not help. Saeli ignored the comparison. Torin entered carrying a data wafer. We found another shadow authorization. Where? Malkor Destroyer, 7 Dawn. Saeli turned active? No. Dormant. Purpose? Unknown. Mercer spoke from the screen. Check the Riven fleet. Saeli did. There were 2, then another. Then 4 more different vessels. Different governments. Dormant identity shadows buried inside the concordance network. Saeli stopped breathing for a moment. Mercer understood first, this isn't about us. No, it's about everyone. Saeli brought up the network map. The realization formed slowly and then all at once. An attacker could manufacture an apparent offensive command from any vessel inside the true sphere. Human, Riven, Malkor, neutral. The network designed to prove who fired first could be made to lie. Worse, it could lie convincingly? Saeli whispered. They do not need to destroy the summit. Mercer waited. They only need one side to believe the other broke the lock, then retaliation does the rest. She looked at him. For the first time since his arrival, she understood why he had refused the override. If Mercer had bypassed the concordance lock during the first alert, humanity would have appeared to confirm exactly what the forged signal claimed, a human weapons sequence. A human emergency override, a human battleship suddenly independent of shared control. No technical explanation would have mattered after that. The story would already have been written. Humanity brought its feared warship to peace talks and reclaimed its guns the moment security challenged it. Saily rubbed both hands across her face. I built this system. Mercer said nothing. I built the architecture that allows this. You built the architecture someone attacked. That distinction matters less to me than you think. Good? She looked up sharply. Mercer continued. Means you'll fix it. You are very calm for someone whose ship nearly became the trigger for an interstellar war. We're still the trigger. Saily glanced at the monitor. He was right. Riven and Malkor fleets had not relaxed. Station defenses continued tracking Aegis Black. Mercer merely asked, "How physical?" I need to inspect the isolation path between your local firing controls and the concordance interface. That is inside the Combat Information Center. Yes, foreign personnel are not normally invited there. Neither are false strategic arming. The human ship remained under weapons lock, but Fear did not care about the details of an investigation. Fear remembered the first alarm. Saily stood. I need physical access to your command system. Torin stared at her. Commands. Mercer considered that. Docking authorization will be sent. Aegis Black felt different from the station. The lattice of Oris had been designed to make everyone comfortable. Wide halls, soft light, rounded surfaces, neutral colors. The human battleship appeared designed under the assumption that comfort was useful only when it did not interfere with survival. Everything had a purpose. Doors were thick. Corridors were segmented. Handrails ran along walls even where artificial gravity was stable. Saily noticed emergency markings every few meters. Not decorative safety instructions, actual procedures. If this fails, go there. If that closes, use this. If the ship loses power, follow the floor lights. Humanity had built redundancy into the architecture like another civilization might build statues. Mercer met Saily outside the Combat Information Center. No ceremony, no guards beyond what was necessary. You came alone? My assistant remained on the station. Trust? Efficiency? Good answer. The command center doors opened. Saily stopped. She had expected something dramatic. Instead, she found discipline. Stations arranged in layered arcs, officers working quietly. No one seemed frightened. That disturbed her. You understand that half the station currently believes you attempted to arm a strategic weapon. A young human officer glanced up. Mercer answered for him. They understand. They do not look concerned. They are concerned. How can you tell? They're working faster. Saily almost smiled, almost. Mercer led her to the fire control isolation console. A physical mechanism separated the concordance interface from the ship's local weapon authority. Saily examined it. Human engineers had added independent verification hardware before entering the summit. You modified your ship. Yes, why? We didn't like a single external network controlling strategic systems, and yet you joined it.